What's up everyone, Kaze no What If is here with What If a Soul was sent into Naruto verse. Before we start, if you like the video, like it, share with your friends, comment, and let's start the video. Konan took the chakra paper into her hand. You gotta push a small amount of chakra into it. Okay, Aria. Konan did so and the paper was torn into 3 pieces. One of these pieces was over half of the entire chakra paper big and was promptly shredded to small pieces. Wind. One of the remaining pieces was completely soaked, signalizing water, while the other turned to dust. Earth. Konan looked at Rei with an expectant and excited gaze at Rei, who released a soft exasperated sigh. You have a main wind affinity. A strong one, at that. Well, figures, this is probably what helps your bloodline to fold the paper and sharpen it? Ma, just my guess. Konan nodded attentively. Next you have earth affinity. I would say this is what makes your paper durable and capable of hardening. Maybe, maybe not. Konan only relocated her gaze to the soaked part. She looked kinda like a puppy. Wide eyes pleading for an explanation. Ah. The last is water affinity. I must say I don't know. Ah. Maybe it helps you keep the shape of your paper in the water? I mean, it gets wet alright, but I never saw it soaked. It's as if it was made of something unable to absorb water or something. Can you even consciously control that? Rei meant that. This was aim no kuni. Most of the year, the rain never stopped. Yet, Konan's paper stayed intact even under the rain when they ran through the forest. He always thought it was due to her chakra, and looks like he was partially right. Konan took his words to heart and filled one of her papers with her chakra. She sunk it into a bucket full of water and watched as the paper held its form. Suddenly, she started to get ideas on how to exploit it in battle. She was, after all, in a water-filled country. If she could shoot her shurikens from water. Ehehe. After she was done contemplating the best way to murder someone, Konan tried to actually control this attribute of the paper, and the paper got soaked. She stared at it, giddy at learning something new about her capabilities, and tried to unsoak the paper. Rei could only stare in surprise as the paper expelled the water, still sunk deep in the bucket, and became yet again a properly flat form. A second later, he saw Konan start folding it into an origami under the water. I call bullshit, he thought. 3 main elements and all helping in her paper manipulation. Rei knew what this was. It was obvious. No matter how much denial he was in. The girl didn't have a Kekii Genkai. No. She had yet unregistered Kekii Tota. Now. Why the hell Jiraiya in the canon never noticed? Because it is bullshit. That's why. Kekii Tota is rare as fuck. In the entire world, only Onaki is supposed to have it at the moment, and it is very destructive. Even if you find somebody with 3 chakra natures, it could be called lucky, but wouldn't mean that person has Kekii Tota. Heck, it would not mean that person has Kekii Genkai. To have Kekii Genkai, one has to have 2 chakra natures capable of working in tandem to create a new, special type of chakra, in case of elemental Kekii Genkai, or a special type of chakra. Mostly derived from elemental chakra, that does something. Not elemental. And then there are dojutsu. Anyway, Konan is certainly in the second category, as it was proven that her chakra natures indeed do affect her paper manipulation. As for why Rei called it bullshit. Even he could fold paper with his chakra. He bet even Jiraiya could. That was most likely why Jiraiya disregarded it as a talent for chakra control when it came to making origami. But he cannot make the paper fly, sharpen, harden, cut. etc. unless he directly imbued the elemental chakra into it. Konan can. On instincts alone. Jiraiya surely just disregarded her the same as he disregarded Naruto. He saw Rinnegan, a candidate for the prophesied child, and anything else was a moot point for him. Rei had problems with creating 2 exploding tags, yet Konan is able to divide her chakra and manipulate up to 50 paper shurikens so far. Simultaneously at that. That's multitasking at its finest. If it was not instinctive, there is no way her mind would be able to do it. He called hacks. Rei. Konan pulled him out of his reverie. Your turn. She pointed at the chakra paper in his hand and Rei sighed, wishing for something good. Like. Dunno. At least 2 natures would be nice. He casually pushed a sliver of his chakra into it. There was really no need to be tense. The result would not change anyway. What happened next made Konan and Rei widen their eyes. The paper split into 5 identical parts. One was torn to shreds. One was turned to dust. One was soaked wet. One was crumpling with sparks. One was set on fire. Oh. I have all 5 chakra natures. Rei stood there stunned, thinking about how it could happen while Konan was beaming. She was happy her friend had so much potential. Congratulations, Rei. Konan excitedly jumped next to him and took his hands into hers as she expressed her happiness by spontaneously kissing him on the cheek and tightly hugging him. Thank you. Rei sincerely told her as his arm snaked around her small frame and returned the hug. Let's play. Konan innocently asked, and Rei didn't want to destroy the atmosphere between them. Sure. They then proceeded to spend the afternoon together, playing with each other. Either doing dodgeball with Kunao, a tag on the ceiling, or tug of war with a paper, Konan with her paper manipulation and Rei with his chakra strings. It was only later that night when Rei laid on the bed, Konan snuggled into his side, fast asleep. He thought about his chakra natures. His mind had a few solutions. His supreme chakra control talent or his godly nature energy talent. Or these 2 talents mixed together. He just had to know, because it might be information capable of giving him an idea of how to exploit it further. A task for another time, perhaps. Rei sighed as he felt very tired. Konan can be incredibly energetic when it comes to playing a tag. Rei looked at the peaceful sleeping face of the girl and his hand rested on her head as a slight smile appeared on his face. He closed his eyes and focused on the natural energy around him. Carefully pulling a strand into his own body, dissolving it in his muscles, bones, blood, and organs, feeling them get slightly stronger as his body felt as if it was just pampered and massaged. He then did the same for Konan, who melted into him with a satisfied expression because of that. Afterward, his consciousness was engulfed by the darkness. Night and exhaustion claimed him. Rei and Konan stood in the woods, both clutching a slip of paper between their palms as they trained their nature transformation. Konan was trying to cut the paper in half while Rei trained his sap ability first. But damn, was it hard to make the paper wrinkled. They trained for months on this alone. Rei really had no idea how the twerp of Uchiha learned Chidori in a month. Kakashi had to be a hell of a good teacher for that to happen. A pity that was only when he actually wanted to teach something to someone. After all, he was UMBU captain and did train new recruits. Saying he didn't know how to teach. Yeah, sure. Alas, Rei was in a severe lack of a teacher and had to wing it. Konan had similar problems, but Rei's advice of try to make your chakras sharp helped. Somewhat. She could already cut the leaf after 3 months, but now she wanted to learn to control her wind chakra and actually coat the paper in it instead of cutting it. It was still a work in progress. Rei could actually create lightning chakra. It was no jutsu, alright. But he could numb, or give a slight jolt to others. He tried. He had a lot of unsuspecting test subjects in the marketplace. It was nothing much so far, but this was aim no kuni. There was water everywhere, so it would prove useful. Especially since he could conduct his lightning chakra through his chakra strings. Rei mostly focused on his Fuinjutsu. After these months, Konan had hundreds of exploding tags on her person and he had a few tens. Same with the storage seals filled with paper shurikens. He had 10 while Konan had around 100. Rei was very curious why the seals work even though they have no real chakra sustaining them. Surely the seals should cease their function as the chakra dissipates, right? No way a seal could function years. He found the answer when he left one storage seal near his bed when he was about to fall asleep and focused on the natural energy to strengthen his and Konan's body. He spotted a very, very minuscule amount of natural energy sustaining the seal. It was so small it seemed like an occasional flicker, and even Sage Mode Naruto would have a hard time spotting it even if he was looking straight at it. But it was there. He once again thanked God for his godly nature energy attunement talent. The day after that, he started consciously putting natural energy into his seals the same way he did with his and Konan's body, and his exploding tags' effectiveness improved by a factor of 2. They were now slightly stronger than the tags stolen from the IWA shinobi. Considering Konan had more than 100 of them. Thanks to natural energy and being older, both their bodies improved tremendously. They didn't have any taijutsu style but often sparred together. Rei's body was stronger though. Thanks to his talent, he could take much more senjutsu chakra into his system to passively boost his body over time, and it showed. He was faster, stronger, and more durable. It all became a moot point the second Konan started to use her paper. It really put into perspective just why bloodline clans and clan shinobi are so much more valued in shinobi villages. With the same amount of training and in the same conditions, Konan could trash him because he did not have anything special. No technique. No bloodline. The strength of his body could get him only so far. Thankfully he had his talents. He knew exactly how strong Fuinjutsu and Sage Arts are in later stages. For now, he would endure and become stronger. Rei, Konan suddenly called out to him, pulling him out of his thoughts. He looked at her, and instantly spotted her wary look. Check. His eyes widened. Konan could leave her paper around and use them as a kind of extension of her chakra sensing. The entire town and the woods had pieces of her paper scattered just in case. Check meant she discovered something wrong. House. Konan thinned her lips. Rei quickly started sensing the area through senjutsu and froze. Fuck. 10 squads. 30 feels similar to Genin. 15 Shinin. 5 higher. Rei used the shinobi from IWA as a measuring scale so he could at least feel amounts of chakra. They are slaughtering people. He cursed. This was not how he imagined his afternoon to go. Thankfully, their supplies were stashed in storage scrolls they had always on themselves. Orders. Konan looked at Rei. While Rei thought it was cute how she started to act as a subordinate, especially since they both were 8, but activate the exploding tags scattered around the town when a shinobi comes into their vicinity. I will alert you when they get into the forest. We will do the same. We can't outrun them and we'll have to outsmart them and hide. For now, let's run in the opposite direction of the town. Rei didn't know if they had a chakra sensor or anyone who could track them, but he was not really inclined to find out. Both Konan and Rei started running away. The town was a mess. Blood, guts, and gore filled the streets as men, women, and children were being slaughtered left and right by Konoha shinobi. Why? Because it was a good place for an outpost. Surrounded by woods so rare in the aim. Konohanin were used to woods. It was their home field. There was no way they would not try to acquire this town. Alas, the people were quite useless for them. Hey, Daki! A woman screamed at a man nearby who was tearing clothes from a young teenage girl. No asterisk. She barked, showing her canines. Clearly an Inyazuka. The man grumbled but obeyed and instead slit the girl's throat in annoyance. He wanted to say fuck you to the Inyazuka bitch, but she was Jonin and he was still a genin. Misa Inyazuka looked around with a cold gaze. Deep down, she could sympathize with the people, but she had her orders. She could only watch in apathy as her subordinates kill children, women, and the elderly. She was long used to scenes like this. That's when it happened. Daki was approaching her and out of sudden, he wasn't. A loud boom resounded through the town as the exploding tag tore Daki to shreds, sending his torn limbs flying apart as his guts painted the ground red and shitty. Misa could only curse. This was a trap. Regro dash before she could give that order, a series of other loud booming sounds resounded all over the village. The Konohanin finally met with each other, uncaring about the people who were running away, as their orders were to leave nobody alive in the town. If somebody manages to outrun shinobi, no qualms there. Laughable thought. Who would believe it? Misa and her ninkin sat in the corner as she saw 3 of her Jonin-ranked colleagues. That's all of us. A man, a barame, told them, making them astonished. 4 Jonin, 9 Genin, and 18 Genins. They lost 19 people so far. Misa couldn't help but curse. This mission was swiftly becoming one of those fabled troublesome rank UPS. Okay, Misa sighed as she heard the man who had the command. Say so, Haytake. We will stay here and secure the place. Misa, you will take 5 Genin and go scout the forest. Mikuro, he nodded at the Abarame man. Says there is a chakra trail there. Be careful, we have no idea how the exploding tags are hidden from his bugs. Especially since there seems to be no delay between activation and explosion. If you find hostiles, kill them. Misa and her 5 Genin came to the edge of the forest, all feeling uneasy. That's when Ninkin barked at her, that he found the smell of humans. The group quietly hopped from tree to tree, keeping some distance between them. Akaru, a Genin, was about to spring himself away as his feet impacted the thick branch when what were his last thoughts, as his mind didn't even manage to register the pain as he was literally slaughtered by a flurry of paper shurikens enhanced by wind chakra. Misa could only watch in horror as one of her Genin was made into a Swiss cheese instantly. She gestured to the group to stop. Guys. Careful. I have no idea what this shit is, but obviously, we are against a very skilled Fuinjutsu master. The explosive tags have no delay and the traps are enhanced with elemental chakra. Rei didn't know that his stasis seal was a masterpiece in the eyes of the ninja. No stasis or storage seal was able to hold chakra infused into the weapons, much less if that chakra was elemental one. The group scattered, getting even more distance between themselves in fear of being caught up in the traps together. The hop from tree to tree, following the Ninkin. Misa could swear she could occasionally see 2 running figures far away through the trees, but as she was about to focus more on them, Kira, the man in the position next to her, was sent flying to high heavens. And fell near bushes. Misa could only curse. Her instincts flared, and even if Kira was a slight distraction, surely intentional, she managed to jump backward, just in time to avoid another flurry of futon paper shurikens. She landed on the ground and noted that the branch was completely shredded. She cursed again. A powerful wind user. A groan tore through her throat. With the corner of her eyes, she could see shaken Rika staring at Kira, her fiancé, and wobbly approach his corpse while tears streamed down her face. Misa was about to admonish the girl when she took the charred body of her man into her arms, but a whirl of papers flew out of the bushes, sticking onto terrified Rika. Misa will never forget the horror-filled eyes as the Chunin under her command looked at her pleadingly just a split of second before the papers exploded. Torn both her and her already deceased fiancé to shreds, leaving only a bloody smear and charred ground behind. Suddenly, Misa and the two remaining Chunin didn't feel like. Correction. One remaining Chunin. Mika watched as Kaguro fell prey to yet another storm of futon paper shuriken. Yes, Misa and Myuko, the last Chunin, really did not feel like following. Retreat. Misa ordered in apathy and Myuko obeyed. Misa entered the house that was chosen as a makeshift command center and found Heitake Teiko sitting behind a table. The man spotted Misa's distraught expression and suddenly had a sinking feeling. Jonin Misa, what's the situation? Heitake Teiko, Misa sadly shook her head. Kira, Rika, and Akaru are dead. The forest is packed with explosive tags and traps. All high quality without delay or any signs before activation. The enemy has a skilled futon user as the weapons were infused with futon chakra. We first. She proceeded to explain the entire situation to the slightest of detail. Any visuals? No, Misa denied. Only 2 running kids, but even then it was a fleeting thing from far away. I, however, don't think a kid would be able to dash. You would be surprised. Seizo interrupted her with narrowed eyes. Paper shurikens, you say? It may be some new Kekii Genkai. We have to report it? He sighed and dragged his hand through his tired eyes. This is a disaster, Misa. Yes. Seizo. The two knew each other as both had a thing for Ninken. They just hated to let it be known. 22 casualties on a mission to take over a civilian town. It couldn't get any worse. Just then Conan's explosive tags in the forest, that was the entire reason the town was being taken over, went off. Misa and Seizo had to brace themselves as 100 explosions rattled the forest and created a small earthquake. Seizo hurriedly ran to the window and what he saw made him swear worse than a sailor. The forests around were burning. The sky was painted orange as the flames quickly spread through the trees, reaching far above the treetops, irreparably destroying the forest. Seizo could only bitterly watch as the strategic advantage of home field turned into dust. This mission was an utter failure. Both Conan and Rei panted from the long run as they saw the forest burn. Good. We managed to make the trackers turn around. Rei smiled slightly. Conan, hearing him, hugged his arm to her chest in relief as her forehead rested on his shoulder. They are alive. For now. The two kids proceeded to trek through the stony fields away from the edge of the forest. Their direction? Unknown. Night fell and both Rei and Conan were shivering under a makeshift roof made of Conan's papers. The air was still shivering though, and even huddled together it was very cold. Rei sighed and took out a paper and started drawing with his chakra-infused ink. Warmth. He then made a few additional numeric parameters and activated the seal. Putting it on himself, he could feel warm again, as if he was under the sun. It was not hot, but it was incredibly pleasant. He swiftly made another seal for Conan, who smiled at him for it. Before he could smile in return, he found Conan's lips pressing into his for the first time in the time they lived together. Flushed, Conan flopped back into the spot next to him and meekly looked to the ground as she fumbled with her fingers. Rei also had red cheeks and he couldn't help but think. Girls really do mature sooner, don't they? He scratched his cheek with his left hand and with his right he cupped Conan's cheek, raising her head so her eyes would meet his. As the second their eyes met, Rei pressed his lips onto Conan's cheek. After a few seconds, he pulled away with a small smile. Thank you. Thank you too. They slept, embracing each other, feeling warm and safe. The next few weeks gave Rei a hard lesson. Life without a home, on the run is not easy. Conan could take care of finding, or better said, creating a shelter, and he could create nifty runes to provide warmth. Water was abundant in the Aim no Kuni, but he still missed bed. A place he felt safe. Slightly, during these weeks, the meaning of home shifted in his mind. He no longer associated it with a building or village. He now associated it with Conan. He could feel at ease and protected when he was with her. The same could be said about Conan. The two kids quickly learned how to fend for themselves in the wild and avoid skirmishes of shinobi. Needless to say, Rei and Conan only stayed out of sight and range. They were getting more and more daring. Learning by doing. As they came to witness more and more battles, scavenged battlefields for money, seals, and weapons, their chakra senses caught on many shinobi and the way they controlled their chakra. Rei could detect hiding shinobi easily thanks to his natural energy sensing, and through that, he managed to create chakra hiding technique. He found out that if he adds a sliver of natural energy on top of his chakra signature, he is basically invisible to chakra sensors as they were unable to sense it. At the end of the third week, both Conan and Rei were bunking in a small cave, holding hands as Rei still thought about a method for teaching Conan the chakra hiding technique. No matter what, he was sure, the girl would be able to use natural energy for it. It was an external technique and as such, not dangerous. The problem was she could not sense the natural energy. If she could sense it, she could learn how to control it. Not entirely. But masking her chakra would be enough for now. He was racking his brain about it when suddenly Conan shook him. Are you thinking about a new seal? She asked with excited eyes. Rei quickly found out the girl loved it when he showed her his seals. Anything he showed her, really. By now, Rei knew that Conan was his for life. The girl would never even think about betraying him, and it warmed his heart. In only a slightly over a year, he managed to inspire enough loyalty in the girl as Yahiko did after 10 years of living with her. Of course, he was smug about it. He just didn't like her tendencies and her way of thinking. She would gladly be left behind if it meant Rei would survive. That's the main reason why Rei decided to make them stronger, subtler, invisible. He did not want to encounter such a situation. Conan was his and he would be damned if he let anyone take her from him. Ah! Seal! Conan expectantly bobbed her head up and down. But... Seal! Rei thought as he was patting delighted Conan's head. The cute girl became his pillar of support in this dangerous world. He remembered how she alerted him of the shinobi and smiled to himself. He had to focus on sensing. Conan sensed in a limited way unconsciously and could channel it through her papers. It was a very useful thing. Her sense. Ah! An idea flashed through Rei's head. Lately, any problem of his had one solution. Seals. So, why not this time too? He only had to make sure Conan was able to sense the natural energy for a bit until she learned how to control it to hide her chakra. He didn't need to make her into sage or something. Rei whipped out sealing supplies and furiously started writing. Senses link time. He set parameters and the seal that would link his and Conan's senses for a few minutes was created. Rei didn't even think much about it. He was too ignorant to think more in depth about what linking senses would do to two people or even how exactly would it be accomplished. Even if for a second. Alas, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. He gripped one side of the paper, where one end of the link was, and smiled at Conan. Here. This should help me teach you how to hide your chakra. Rei excitedly told Conan. The girl trusted Rei with her very life and much more. She nodded excitedly and with a determination took a hold on the other side of the paper, right on the other end of the link. The two children instantly froze, their eyes wide as their mouth opened in a soundless scream. The seal did exactly what it was supposed to do. It linked. Show menu. Rei's and Conan's souls clash started to intensify, but both children were far too gone. Pain, pleasure, senses. None of that reached their minds that were being overloaded, stretched. Their chakra flared up, swirling around them, sending blue wisps all around the cave. The two chakras started to get closer, push against each other until they started to entwine. Strands made of chakras started to merge as if being knitted together. Once a strand of two chakras was done, it snapped. But wisps of Rei's chakras stayed in Conan's, similarly as some of Conan's stayed in Rei's. And the process started all over again. Hundreds, thousands of strands were merging and snapping again and again until nobody could determine where Conan starts or where Rei ends. And yet, they were both singular. Both separated. On a deeper level, the change was even more insane. Their very souls were clashing against each other. Conan's 8-year-old small quivering soul and Rei's over 20-year-old soul were forcefully pulled together. Merging, exchanging something. Something vital. They were creating a link. As Rei's soul tore a chunk of Conan's soul absorbed a chunk of Rei's of the same size. In multiple places were these two souls ripping apart the other and absorbing it, but not in one moment was one less than the other. They were getting in perfect sync, taking and ripping only as much as was taken and ripped from them. Conan and Rei could only stare at each other in horror as they felt their entire existence being overhauled. They felt every rip in their soul. They felt every fulfilling absorption of a piece of the other's soul. They felt their chakra change, flare, grow. Their reserves were getting lower and lower as the chakra produced in their coils was getting denser and denser the more their souls exchanged matter. And when they were getting more and more tired, on the verge of chakra exhaustion, the timer ran out and the seal ceased to work. The chakras pulled away from each other. The souls stopped clashing. The final product was an amalgamation of both souls and chakras, and yet both Conan and Rei didn't become one entity. They were clearly still two separate beings with their respective bloodlines, skills, personalities, minds, souls. But their souls were no longer resembling a human. They were a patchwork of two. As was their chakra. Nobody will ever be able to find out where one started and the other ended. The second the seal ceased its action, both exhausted kids started falling forward. They gently fell into each other's embrace and their foreheads gently met. Rei and Conan started shuddering in euphoria. Their very existence was happy at the touch. Their hearts fluttered and their souls couldn't help but shudder with their bodies as the two patchwork amalgamations connected, no longer fighting but somehow creating one, bigger soul. At least, until the two children again separate. While Rei and Conan blissfully slept in each other's embrace, their connected soul was unconsciously pressurizing their bodies, connecting their chakra in a similar way as their souls. Suddenly, their chakra coils had a need to widen. They had to contain these two. No, this one connected amount of chakra and had no space. And that is what their bodies and chakra coils did. They started growing. Slowly, ever so slowly. But the chakra created was dense, heavy, compressed. The pressure on their bodies was barely being mitigated as the natural energy flooded their bodies, reinforcing them, soothing them, toughening them while keeping them alive. The destruction and recreation of the cells were faster than normal human eyes could process, and both Rei and Conan physically aged by 2 years. Their bodies looked like 10 years olds. As their minds started to be caressed by the energy, they started to increase in proficiency, processing speed, capacity. They gained something akin to perfect memory and enhanced mind. But for all the advantages, Conan and Rei could never separate. They now belonged to each other. This connection was far more severe than any magical marriage bond could be in a distant world of wizards. Unknowingly to them, no human being could survive such a clash of souls, chakra, and the flood of natural energy. The supreme chakra control talent and godly natural energy attunement talent barely managed to keep the kids alive, changing them irreversibly. Somewhere near a Megakure, Hanzo's boss salamander summon suddenly stopped as if struck. Its eyes wide and mouth agape. Only Hanzo recognized the shock of his old friend and got worried as he never saw him in such a state. The summoned animal was visibly shivering as a poisonous cloud was leaving its mouth. Hanzo decided it was not worth it to keep fighting if his summoned salamander was in such a state. He looked at the 3 idiots who challenged him and were now bloodied, messy, and barely standing while supporting each other. Sigh, youngsters these days. So rash. He sneered behind his mask at them, his eyes looking at them in contempt. The 2 men were alive only because the weak female was an extraordinary medic. Without her, they would be but a smear on the ground or keeling over from the poison in a minute. Exactly like their summoned animals. Heh, salamanders rocks. Manda and Gamabunta were both barely swaying from side to side, a little away from the battlefield as they had to put a supreme effort to stay on their feet. Or belly, in Manda's case. Katsuya was already out of it, but then again, she was the one without any damage as poison managed to only knock her out. It wouldn't hurt her in any other way. Tsunade felt despair. She knew exactly how much chakra she had left and it didn't look very promising. Hanzo was much stronger than her idiotic teammates thought. He was playing with them. 3-on-1 and he was standing on his salamander looking at their battered form with a raised eyebrow. It was a very painful wake-up call. But then she felt it and her head snapped to the east. The boundless energy coming from somewhere. She could only feel it on the corner of her senses. Not fully. But she knew where she felt something like this the last time. Hashiramagia. Her mind faltered. She didn't know it was Senjutsu Chakra, an amount large enough to topple boss summon, that she was sensing. But this feeling ingrained itself in her soul and will stay in her mind for years to come, making her unable to forget. Unable to get it out of her mind. Unable to focus on anything else. She was a Senju and Senju had a peculiar body. Connected to nature. Sensitive. Tsunade was too close to not be affected. Jiraiya's mind was reeling even though his body could not move anymore as Tsunade supported him. He could feel the boundless nature energy. But he had more important things to think about. Tsunade. Boobs. Squishy. Ihihi. Orochimaru. Had only one thought as his eyes darted from side to side with a frown, playing cool despite his blood literally covering his body. No little boys anywhere. Me. I will now withdraw. Hanzo told them regally even though he was mentally rolling his eyes. The trio was happy they stood on their feet. What withdraw? If they will really believe such bullshit and lousy acting. Ah, they are Konohanin. Of course, they would believe it. You fought well, cough, weaklings, cough, younglings. Hanzo's eyebrow twitched as he impassively continued as if it was a rehearsed script in a bored tone. I will now bestow a title of 3 ordner dash, ahem, Sunin. Yes. You are from now on Sunin of Konoha. Wear it as proudly as you stood today in front of me and entered a dash, ahem, managed to fight me. On. The trio that was barely standing, happily flopped onto the ground, and Hanzo's sweat dropped. I am still here, you know. He thought awkwardly and then noted the white-haired man was already soundly sleeping while his hand was squeezing a boob of the ticked-off blonde female who was barely restraining herself from punching the idiot to his early grave. The black-haired girlish boy was sighing in disappointment. At least one smart man. Hanzo mentally praised, but then he saw the wide, disturbing perverse smile on Orochimaru's dreamy face and his long tongue rolling out of his mouth with drool as his eyes glazed over. Dreaming about research, boy toys, and ugh. Hanzo shuddered. Well, better get the fuck outta here. And with that Hanzo turned around, disturbed, and ran. His mind conspiring, tears streaming down his face as he thanked it was raining. Maybe Konoha really did know what they were doing. Sending those 3 against me. I feel scarred for life. The huge spike of natural energy was forgotten by all but Tsunade who, in that instance, found a new life goal for herself. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, subscribe to my channel for more fanfictions like this, and goodbye.